So we were discussing beautiful verse from Bhagavad Gita 2.54 where Arjuna is asking from Krishna about Sthitaprajna. Arjuna Vacha स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा समाधिस्थस्य केशवः स्थितधिः किं प्रभासेत किम् आसीत व्रजेत किम्. So Arjuna is asking from Krishna that how asthita pragya ka bhasha kim prabhaseta. So both are in one way same. How does he speak? Kim asita, how does he sit in the midst of sense objects? Varjeta kim, how does he engage with sense objects? So in text number 2.55, Krishna speaks the general symptoms of sthita pragya. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parth manogatan atmani evatmana tushtaha sthita pragyastado uchyate. So Krishna says the general symptom of a sthita pragya, or the first symptom of a sthita pragya, or the most important symptom of sthita pragya is that he gives up all desires of sense gratification, knowing well that they are coming from manogatan, from mental concoction. And then he can enter into the realm of transcendence. Sarvan Partha, that means all desires. So if a person has even single desire to enjoy in the material world, then he cannot enter into the realm of transcendence. And that's a big challenge, because to give up all desires and to not have any hope to enjoy materially, then only one can enter into the realm of transcendence. Till then we are at the gate of transcendence where we are able to see both, but we cannot experience happiness because we are not entering, and we cannot enter unless sarvan parth manogatan, unless one gives up these desires, knowing well they all are mental concoction. Just by giving up all these desires, he will experience tushtaha, santusti at level of mind. Then now from 2.56, so in these two texts now, 2.56 and 2.57, Krishna talks about ka bhasha kim prabhaseta, both. दुःखेषु अनद्विघ्नमनः सुखेषु विगतः स्पृह वीतरागभयक्रोधः स्थितधीरमुनिरुच्यते. So he's saying more than what he speaks, what he thinks, that is important, because sometimes one may not speak externally, but he speaks internally. So he's saying, Dukkhesu anudagna manaha, sthita pragya, he does not get agitated by dukkha. He does not get affected by dukkha. Sukhesu vigat spraha. When happiness comes, he does not desire that sense gratification from that happiness. He's not interested in the sense gratification from that happiness. Vitaraga bhaya krodha, he is free from attachment, he is free from fear, he is free from anger, and he is situated. That is his thought process. And elaborately we discussed how Prabhupada says when a dukkha comes in life of a devotee, he thinks this is my own prarabdha. But Krishna is so merciful, only a token of it is giving to me. When sukha comes, he thinks that this also is my prarabdha. But let me engage this in Krishna's service, otherwise this will become a trap for me. This is another way of a trap. But let me engage what Krishna is giving me in Krishna's service. So that is Sukhesu Vigatah Vitarag Bhaya Krodha Sthitadhir Munir Chate. So this also elaborately we discussed. And then the next verse also is similar, where is talking about Ka Bhasa Kim Prabhaseta. Ya Sarvatrane Bhi Snehas तत् प्राप्य शुभाशुभम् नाभिनन्दति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिताः. So here again the similar thing, that he does not get affected by whatever good or evil comes in his life, because he knows supreme controller is Krishna, and whatever Lord does for everyone is for their betterment only, is for their good only. So he, knowing that fact, he is fixed in his Krishna consciousness. So he is not becoming agitated, and neither he is becoming carried away by the happiness. And that's why Prabhupada is terming both, even the misery and the happiness of this material world, as upheaval, because both can take one away from Krishna. So devotee is not very much getting affected. And we will elaborately discuss that how a devotee is not getting affected by the duality. Because of this, he can focus on eternality. If a person focuses too much on duality, then he cannot focus on eternality. Devotee is not getting consumed and absorbed in the temporary or uh, immediate problems of his life, whereas he focuses on the real problems of his life: birth, old age, disease, death. So that's why Krishna, time and again, is a constant theme in Bhagavad Gita: equanimity in duality. Because the more one gets affected by these dualities, that much he cannot focus on eternality. The short-term pleasures and the pains of this world, they will not allow us to focus on the long-term happiness of spirit soul. So that's why Krishna is saying it's very important to not get affected. And there is a tendency in a conditioned soul to very much get affected by this. Sometimes devotees also, we see that they get so much consumed by temporary or short-term aspects of their life, that they start compromising spiritual life, because mind tells, for now this is most important to solve and deal with. What about spiritual life, that we'll see later on, but for now this is most important. and and that later never comes. Because every time material energy brings forth some situation like this, where we get these kind of thoughts. So in text number 56, 57, this was answered, which we discussed, that is ka bhasa and kim prabha setam. Now text number 58 to 61, sorry, 60, है तो 62, so 58 to 63. These verses, Krishna will talk about Kim Asita. How does Sthitaprajna sits among the sense objects? So from 58 till 61 we discussed yesterday, right? यदा संहरते चायं कुरुमो कुरुमो अङ्गानिव सर्वसः इन्द्रियाणा इन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठितः. So first thing Krishna says is that Sthita Pragya, like a tortoise, withdraws his senses. He has that ability and capacity to withdraw his senses from sense objects. So that means his senses are under his control. At his will, when he wants, he can withdraw. Prabhupada writes in the purport, this is the test of a yogi, to withdraw his senses from the sense objects. But then in the very next verse, Krishna says, Vishaya vina vartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopiyasya param drishtva nivartate. Krishna says, you may withdraw senses, but you cannot sustain them for longer time if you don't have higher engagement for them, if you don't have higher taste for them. Like a small child, you may drag him and keep in the room, but if you don't give him some another engagement, then it's very difficult to keep him. The moment your attention goes, he'll go. But if you have a good engagement for him, he's very happy being playing. So Krishna is saying that artificially you cannot withdraw senses for longer time. So if you want to withdraw your senses, then you have to know the importance of developing higher taste. See, apart from Bhakti Yoga, many other processes they focus on artificially self-restraining the senses, which Krishna is condemning here. That artificial self-restraint will not go for longer time. We see this many Nasa Mukti Abhiyan people, they remain without Nasa for 3 months or 4 months. But then once again the sense object comes in front, then they lose. Because artificially, how long one will control the senses? So Krishna is saying if you are thinking about sense control, then that is not possible without having higher taste. So that means actual sense control in one lecture Pupa says only devotee of the Lord can have. So why actual sense control only devotee of the Lord can have? Because by bhakti only he can have higher taste. And that is why only devotee can be considered as a self-controlled person. Apart from a devotee, no one else in the world can claim that I have a sense control. Because of not having higher taste, he is vulnerable to fall down to sense demands. So that's what Krishna is speaking here. And Pupa says big yogis like Vishwamitra Muni and all also, they could not control. So this also we discussed. Then he says, Yatato hi api kaunteya Purusasya vipachitaha Indriyani pramathini Haranti prasabham manaha. Then he's saying the senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. So someone may say, why high taste is required? Can't I just keep my senses with me? Can't I withdraw? Krishna is saying, no. Because they are so strong, they are so impetuous. What to say of a person in ignorance, a person in knowledge forgets his knowledge of discrimination and is swayed away by the dictates of the senses. So Krishna is telling, without higher taste, sense control is not possible. He is making that point more clear in this particular verse. That sense control means higher taste. Without higher taste, there is no sense control. And then 61. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita mataparaha vasehi yasendriyani tasya pragya pratishtitaha. So one who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control and fixes his conscience upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. Who can be called a Sthitaprajna? Who has done both. He is able to control his senses also and he is able to engage himself, his senses in my service. And yesterday we discussed that both are austerities at sadhaka level, right? And that is why it is very painful at sadhaka level. So we discussed yesterday that how both are austerity. What is first austerity? Yeah, restrain senses. This is austerity. Like when something comes in front to eat, very difficult to say no, right? We discussed elaborately yesterday. Same way, engaging senses in Krishna service. This also is austerity. So that is why we discussed one important point. What is most important for devotee? Association of devotees. Because one cannot do these two without association of devotees. So in association of devotees, austerity becomes easy and we get more strength. In Kali Yuga, strength comes by Sangha. So if we are in Sangha, then we have strength to do these austerities. And to some extent, it becomes easy. They're very difficult. This also we elaborately discussed. Now, someone may say, okay, that why to develop higher taste? And I may not be able to fully control my senses like a yogi or jnani, but at least I can protect myself from getting degraded to sinful life. uh, I'll be a good person and I will do good to others. दूसरों को दुख नहीं दूंगा, सुखी से जीवन जीऊंगा. अच्छा करो, अच्छा सोचो. There are many people they speak like that, right? So Krishna is saying, okay, if someone is not taking to spiritual life, then he cannot avoid himself from getting degraded to sinful life. That is 62 and 63. That means spiritual life is not only a need for a jiva to experience blissful life, it is a necessity for us to not get degraded to sinful life. So that is being emphasized in text number 62 and 63. That practicing spiritual life not only is a need but also is necessity. Without a spiritual life, you cannot. Many times parents they have problem if a son takes to spiritual life because they have fear Baba ban jayega, Baba ban jayega. But then what happens? 62 and 63 verse comes in his life. And then the same son runs away with some girl or perhaps in some problems. Then the same parents they cry, hi, 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 kya ho gaya hamare putra ka?" Like that. Because they don't understand senses are so strong. That's what Krishna is saying. They don't think that it is just a need at level of a soul to experience blissful life. In order to protect yourself from sinful life, in order to protect yourself from all the suffering, you need a spiritual life. Spiritual life is so important. So then Krishna is talking in these number 62 and 63 that if one is not taking this word seriously, param drishtvana nivartante, where he sincerely working hard to develop higher taste, then what will happen is that is the signs of fall down. Krishna explains, and very systematically. Actually, we have read so many books before coming to Krishna consciousness. We have read so many subjects, but about our life, nowhere such systematic understanding is given as Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita. That's why Bhagavad Gita is known as manual of human, because you see such systematic study how senses are. We never heard these understanding senses are so strong, they are impetuous, they cannot be controlled. We thought, अपनी ही तो senses है, control में ही तो है. And hardly we knew that they are controlling us. But after coming to spiritual life, then we understand, Baap re, till now I was under their control. Like that. And whole world is under the control of these senses. Whole world, whole world. So now Krishna is talking that how it is a necessity also. Hayato vishayan pumsaha sangaste supajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bijayate. So Krishna is saying dhyato vishyan pumsa. Someone may say, okay, my senses are very strong, impetuous, and they may not be fully under my control, but at least I can live a good life. I can live a life where I can help others. Krishna is saying it's not only about your senses, you have mind also. And what happens? Any sensory inputs, it reaches to the mind. Dhyato. And then what happens? Mind contemplates. And it is a beauty of the mind the way Krishna has created. It can make a mole into a mountain and mountain into a mole. That is how mind is. It can make a small problem as a huge problem, and it can make a huge problem as a small problem. That is the mind. That is power which mind has. So any sensory input which comes to the mind contemplates dhyato. And very deep verse. Krishna is telling this is association. Association is not physical proximity. We may be with a devotee very close to him, but still we may not be taking his association. We may be very far away from a devotee, but we are contemplating on instructions given by him. We are contemplating how we can please him. And that is association. You see, Prabhupada says, no, there was never a time I was away from my spiritual master. That means Prabhupada was always in association of his spiritual master. A pure devotee is always in association of Krishna. Why? Dhyato. because he's always thinking about Krishna, how I can please him, what Krishna wants me to do in this situation, like that. So Krishna is saying this Dhyato is very important. And what happens? The sensory inputs, they by default they trigger Dhyato, right? Like we may be having a good consciousness, we may be walking on the road, and suddenly some bad flex or photo or some bad scene comes. Although you may be singing Hare Krishna before, but the moment bad sensory input goes in our system, what happens to our Dhyato? Track changes, right? Previously, you may be singing Ama Jivan Sada Papi, and then you see some this thing, and then track changes. Ham Bhoge, Ham Karta. So he's saying that how they are related to each other. In that also, Dhyato is very important. And then when you do Dhyato, then you are associating. What happens by association? Sangha Sanjayate Kama, you create desires, you develop desires. That is why association plays such an important role. But in our life, we have to know it's not only physical association, it is also mental association or dhyato. In fact, that is only association, dhyato. We may be sitting in midst of devotees, we may be wearing garments of devotees, tilak, everything, and still we may not grow as devotees because dhyato may not be so good. Prabhupada gives example. I think crane, right, who waits for a fish. Uh, Prabhupada says that he appears as if he's a sadhu in meditation because on she will be like at one place fixed and eyes are gazing in one direction and like that. And it appears that she is having such amazing meditation. But then what she is looking for? Any fish, whatever, small also or big, whatever. And the moment fish comes, he goes and takes. So why? Because Dhyato is like that. Dhyato is like that. In our one of the important aspect in our spiritual life is to change our dhyato. It's very important to change our dhyato. So we'll discuss this more, how to change the dhyato. But point is, dhyato leads to sangha, sangha leads to kama, material desires will come, and then kama krodh apjayate. What will happen? What is this line? Then what will happen? Anger means what? So then, yeah. हम्म, ठीक है, आपको एक और मीनिंग बताता हूँ मैं क्रोध का, then it will be more relevant. So this is lust or desire. Krodha is now it is more uh, making sense. So this is krodha. So krodha means I want it. That is krodha. That so intensified desire is krodha. At level of a kama, there is possibility for him to understand certain things. He can be guided. But krodha means gone. Now he cannot be guided. His mind has switched off the intelligence. That is krodha. He is intensified lust. Now, only thing which can help him to calm down to some extent is satisfaction of the lust. So that is krodha vijayate. It is intensified desire. So like that it happens. That's how we see many cases, right? Like nowadays you'll find, rapes have increased like anything. What is this? That is krodha vijayate. constant thinking about it, having desire, then intense desire. Now just imagine nowadays, because it is a age where so much media and everything is. All these people are caught, correct? Anyone who does anything like this is caught, and he also knows to some degree before that he'll be caught. And once he's caught, what happens to him? Whole career is gone, whole life is gone, and this also is gone. What do we call image or something? Is it not? Nowadays, those the photo also comes in the news. Not of the girl, because government has a rule. Girl photo should not be, or name should not be highlighted. But the boy name comes and boy photo also comes. ऐसा आ जाएगा, इसने रेप किया। अब सोचो समाज में क्या इज्जत रहेगा उसका। कैरियर गया, इज्जत गया, और it is a gross sin he has to suffer later on. But then all these things are covered over because of krodha bijayate. It becomes so intense. He cannot avoid but indulge like that. Person become. This is why Vyasdev is saying one should not sit on the same level with one's mother, one's daughter, one's sister also, because krodha bijayate. He will not discriminate like that. And to what extent it may happen, you don't know like that. One time there was one program and there was brahmachari, and this grasta house, some program was going on, and in the nearby room some children were playing, so they were making some sound. So this brahmachari had little maybe kshatriya nature, so he went inside the room where children were making noise and "Shh, क्या चल रहा है?" Came in the class and he said, again they were making noise, again he went. So what happened, there was some small girl and he touched the private parts of that small girl, this brahmachari. And later on that girl went to the parents and she reported, and matter was like everyone came to know. So later on everyone was surprised how he can do such an act. How can he go and touch like that? So first thing is, as a brahmachari, he's in a house program in somebody else's house. He should not be so active. If they are making noise, it is their responsibility to do. He should have just sit and heard. But anyways, even if he went, how he could do this? Why? Because dhyato vishwan pumsah. His dhyato was not proper. So because of dhyato, he had those seeds of kama. So when the resources came, he could not control it. He himself is lamenting, Prabhu, I don't know what happened to me. Like that. Why? Because krodha vijayate. Time and again it has happened actually. Time and again it happens. Like that. This is krodha vijayate, Krishna is saying. So if we can remember each word of this verse, then we'll have further discussion. ठीक है? याद ध्याय तो मतलब संगा तेसोपजायते मतलब संगा संजायते कामा means and krodha means intensified desire. Means whatever is actual association, that is this only. Physical association in one way is no association. Prabhupada says, no, a mosquito is very close to me, but is biting me. Prabhupada gives example, right? Like somebody may be sitting very close to us, but is giving displeasure. Then that is not, is not taking advantage of our association. Then that is not association. So actual association is dhyato. That physical association also should translate into dhyato. Then that association will help. So if we meditate on the instruction given by the Guru, or if we meditate upon how I can please Guru, if we meditate upon presence of Krishna, what should I do which pleases Krishna in this situation, then that is Dhyato, we are associating with Krishna. Prabhupada says the moment you chant Hare Krishna, you are associating with Krishna. But when you are chanting Hare Krishna and your mind also is on Hare Krishna, right? And we are chanting Hare Krishna, mind my Gulab Jamun. We are associating with Krishna or Gulab Jamun? Hmm, like that. Prabhupada writes, one who is not Krishna conscious is subjected to material desires while contemplating the object of the senses. The senses require real engagements. If they are not engaged in the transcendental loving service, they will certainly seek engagement in the service of materialism. In the material, everyone. अब आप देखो एग्जाम्पल कैसे प्रभुपाद जी कोट किया and Bhagavatam actually brings best of the personalities getting affected by these tendencies in order to highlight it and tell us that how without Krishna consciousness it is next to impossibility to not sway to sinful life. And yesterday elaborately we discussed that how anyone who is not a devotee of the Lord, he cannot avoid it. You can reflect among all your relatives. You know, either they'll be breaking one of the regulative principles or they'll be having some bad habit which we are not aware about. But everyone will have some sinful life because they are not devotees of the Lord. So here Prabhupada is giving example, even Lord Shiva and Brahma, what to say of other demigods. See, in Bhagavatam, so many examples of Indra comes like this, right? Where he gets affected by this, like that. That means how much this tendency is, deep rooted. The senses, how they make a person mad. And Lord Shiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him, he agreed. As a result, Kartikeya was born. But Prabhupada is saying Haridas Thakur was not agitated. He is saying, why? Because of higher taste, and that is the secret of success. Then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, Sthitaprajna controls also the mind. That indeed is the cause of control of the senses. If one does not have control of the mind at all, please hear the result. A person who thinks of the sense object develops attachment, and by that attachment, he develops strong desire. From desire, anger develops due to obstruction to fulfilling his desire caused by someone or something. Baldev Vidyabhushan is saying, even for those who have controlled the senses, if they do not direct their minds to me, it is inevitable that calamities will again arise. This is expressed in two verses. For the yogi who repeatedly contemplates sense object thinking he will derive pleasure from them. This is dhyato. So Baldev Vidyabhushan is giving this definition. Attachment to those objects arise because of that attachment. Thirst for pleasure from those objects arise when that longing is thwarted by something or other. Anger burning in the heart to contract the obstacles arise. So this is dhyat. When one contemplates on the sense object thinking, he will get pleasure from them, and mind magnifies that. मिलेगा, मिलेगा, बहुत मिलेगा, आज ही मिलेगा. ऐसा. So now in this verse, most important series is dhyat. And you have control where? Out of these four aspects, where you have a control? Dhyayata. Where you have regulator attached? Here only. If here we are not able to work upon, then Sangha Sanjayate Kama, that will happen. And Kama Krodopajayate will happen. So if at all we can control, that is at level of thought. That's why in English there is a saying, kill at thought. But how this can happen? Yes. But all of you feel. How these thoughts. Yeah. Okay. But thoughts. Hmm. हाँ पहला चीज बहुत अच्छा बताया उन्होंने कि बैड इनपुट्स या अवे फ्रॉम सेंस ऑब्जेक्ट्स, अवे फ्रॉम सेंस ऑब्जेक्ट और लिमिटिंग सेंस ऑब्जेक्ट्स, जिससे क्या है, वी आर नॉट फीडिंग अवर थॉट्स बैड थॉट्स, by that will what will happen is bad thoughts will become weak. Second is how that will happen, how this will happen, just by saying like this life is only for Krishna. That's I know that I also know, later on we'll see. Hmm. And write down very striking lines. And ज़्यादा like खुद लेते रहते हैं तो फिर striking line मिलता रहता है. So when we have experiential or attentive or absorbed practice, then this will create positive thoughts. So there should be experience also. Like one of the reason why we shift to voice is we got experience, right? We attended some camps, it was nice. We met some devotees, they nicely showered love and care, and we got nice prasadam, we got nice kirtan, nice classes, nice environment. So we got experience. Then that experience brings some good thoughts, correct? Second is when we have attentive sadhana, when we attentively hear, when we attentively read, when we attentively are present. And third is whatever degree possible, if we have absorption in that, then they will change slowly and gradually. It is not easy, but this is the only way. By this, our intelligence also will be strengthened, which will help us to control our thoughts. And because we have positive experiences, then that also will help. And third is we should be busy in such devotion service so that we don't have time also. So we don't have input to trigger our bad thoughts and we don't have time to facilitate those bad thoughts. आपने एक चीज ऑब्जर्व किया है, माइंड में कभी कुछ ऐसा बैड थॉट आता है और फिर वो कब बढ़ता है, जब हम उसको टाइम देते हैं, करेक्ट ना? तो जो बैड इनपुट आएगा, हो सकता है वो बाहर से आए और हो सकता है वो माइंड खुद ही उस इनपुट को ले ले, अलग से कोई एक विचार जो है उसको सोच ले, तो आ गया, फिर क्या करते हैं हम लोग, उसको टाइम देते हैं, तो टाइम में वो उसको रेसिपी बना देता है, उसको पूरा पका देता है. राइट. तो दोनों चीज़ों से होता है, एक तो है इनपुट, एक है टाइम. तो टाइम आपके पास है नहीं और इनपुट आपने चेंज कर दिया, तो फिर ये चला जाएगा. ऐसा है. आप देखना कितना भी कुछ, जैसे एग्जाम है, एग्जाम से पहले कोई बैड थॉट आते हैं, क्यों? क्योंकि टाइम नहीं है. करना है. कुछ नहीं. प्रभु जी आज फीस आप लोग बनाओ, जो करना है करो. ऐसा. तो हमको ये दो चीज जो है बहुत इंपॉर्टेंटली ध्यान रखना है. एक तो है इनपुट चेंज करना है, और दूसरा है टाइम, जो है सिर्फ गुड चीज़ों के लिए होना चाहिए, बैड चीज़ों के लिए नहीं होना चाहिए. इसलिए हमारे लिए पॉजिटिवली एंगेज्ड बिजी लाइफ इज द ओनली सॉल्यूशन. इसलिए डिवोटीज को लेजी नहीं रहना चाहिए, क्योंकि लेजी रहेंगे तो हमारे सेंसेस हमको गलत डायरेक्शन में ले जाएंगे. इसलिए बहुत पॉजिटिवली एंगेज रहना चाहिए. इसलिए प्रभुपाद जी आप देखोगे उनके शिष्यों को, उनको पता था, बहुत पैशन है अमेरिका में, तो पूरा मॉर्निंग प्रोग्राम खत्म होते ही 9 बजे प्रभुपाद जी को बोलते थे गेट आउट. 7-8 घंटा हरिनाम करो, भिक वितरण करो, फिर रात में आते थे, फिर गौर आरती अटेंड करते, बेचारे इतना थक जाते थे, सो जाते थे. ऐसा जिंदगी प्रभुपाद जी इनको सिखाए, क्योंकि आप ऐसे अगर वो नहीं करोगे तो मुश्किल होगा। और खास करके हमको दोनों चीज आना चाहिए। एक तो है we can go to superior and he will help us to give some engagements, and we should also equip ourselves to create engagements for us. We should not just depend कि प्रभु जो बोलेंगे मैं बस उतना ही करूंगा. No, we should also equip ourselves so that we can create and we can ask blessing कि प्रभु जी मैं ये भी कर सकता हूँ, ये करूँ क्या? They'll happily give. So both are very important. Sometimes what happens, devotees that कि प्रभु जी हमको कोई सेवा ही नहीं है. अरे आप इक्विप करो अपने आपको, जिससे क्या क्रिएट हो आपकी सेवा. You understood? So like that also we should positively think forward that I need positive engagement to do something for giving pleasure to Krishna. And we should do and try in that way. And then it will happen. Like now you see in our case, we keep increasing our preaching. Is it not? So that devotees get more and more engagements, devotees have more such opportunities. So that is each one of our service to increase our equip ourselves in a way so that we can increase our engagements. We can do more things for pleasure of Krishna, like that. Point is, we should be positively busy. Same way, we can make a plan that I will read this section in this way. I will do my sadhana in this way. I will do hearing in this way, reading in this way, preaching in this way. So we have to fill our life with positive Krishna conscious activities in a balanced way, where we have a good time for core sadhana and good time for other engagements. Without such engagements, actually it is very difficult. And you see those who get very nicely spiritually absorbed in such services, they don't get affected. Like Amrish Maharaj getting up early in the morning, cleaning temple hall, whole day absorbed in morning program, and then doing services for pleasure of Krishna. So then they don't have time to think about anything else. Jayanand Prabhu was asked by one devotee, "Okay, Prabhu, will you go back home back to Godhead?" What did he reply? I don't have time to think about it. Can you imagine? I don't have time to think about it. And we have so much time to think. नहीं जाऊंगा. नहीं हो पाएगा इस जन्म में, ना हो पाए. Right? So actually, disciple means he should be busy following the instruction of Guru and Krishna. Like that. This is the only way we can change our thoughts. Then, then he says, Krodha bhavati sammoha सम्मोहात् स्मृति विभ्रमः स्मृति भ्रमसात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. He's saying krodhat bhavati sammoha, that intense desire, what it creates? Illusion. It puts you in moha, illusion. Illusion means what? जो चीज नहीं है उसको देखते हैं. हाँ, और जो चीज नहीं है उसको समझते हैं. Illusion means here is so much happiness. Just imagine. That is सम्मोहा. You become so much illusion. आप देखो ये गलत वीडियो देखोगे तो कितना हैप्पीनेस आएगा, जन्नत से फूल गिरेंगे और तुम तृप्त हो जाओगे, आत्मा को इतना आनंद मिलेगा, बस एक गलत वीडियो देख लो. That is सम्मोहा. Or do this wrong activity, then you will get the bliss of heaven. That is illusion. Illusion means person takes wrong thing as right. That is illusion. सम्मोहा. सब भूल जाता है. और उसकी वजह से क्या होता है? स्मृति विभ्रमः. मेमोरी उसकी बिल्डर हो जाती है. ये क्या बोल रहा है, क्या बोल रहा है? स्मृति विभ्रमः. उसकी मेमोरी गायब हो जाती है, बिल्डर हो जाती है. और फिर बुद्धि नाशो, बुद्धि बंद हो जाती है, उसको तो ताला ही लगा देता है. और देन प्रणश्यति. एक्चुअली not a matter of love. We all succumb to all this, and you will see big people, right? Brahmaji, when Vagdevi came, he just running behind. And who is Brahma? Krishna says the most perfected living entity in the whole universe is made Brahma. Means he is the topmost living entity available in the universe which Krishna selects. Then he is made Brahma. But he could not control. He ran away. And all the Siddhas, Vedas personified, Upanishad personified, they stay in Brahmaloka. And Brahmaji is running. And then they are singing Kamesa Krodesha Rajogna Sattva. Vedas personified are there. But this is how Buddhi Nasat, like that. Such examples are given. So actually, if someone does not work at level of thought, then it is very difficult. That's why Vedic culture was never where sense objects were exposed. The long time in Vedic culture, a boy was not knowing how the child comes because sense objects were not exposed. They were not advertised, and there was no free mixing of boy and girl. And life was very kept very simple, where more focus was on sense control, more focus was on purifying oneself and developing higher taste. Nowadays, we see whole culture has become everywhere. It has become so normal, so normal. Kalkanpur was giving a talk. He was saying in America, 93% boys they watch pornography, 97% girls they watch pornography, and he was telling 35% boys are gay. Gay means homosexual. 35% boys, and the remaining 65% they are not gay, but they think it is okay if somebody wants to be gay. It's not wrong. That is the thought process of remaining 65%. We are saying this is the audience where we are preaching. Can you imagine what level? It's like fully sin going on. And why? Because they are into this from childhood. They are watching all this. Childhood, they are thinking, hearing, and doing. Their movies are also like that only. Hollywood movies means fully pornography only going on, right? So that's why they are into this buddhi nasat pranashyati. But Krishna is not talking about them. Krishna is talking about those who have knowledge also. Like you might have heard about Asam Ram Bapu. He was at one time was a great yogi and great kind of a spiritual leader. But then he happened to fall down to some wrong activity. Why? Because buddhi nasat pranashyati, like that. So very difficult, very difficult. So only place where we can have protection, that is to work on level of thought. Once it crosses, then this will follow. We can't do much. कहीं पर भी नहीं रोका जा सकता. Only place where you can stop, that is dhyato. After that, he cannot. Ajamila tried. He could, no. Ajamila was Suti Sampan. He tried reciting verses, he tried so many things, but it did not work out. Belamangal Thakur, all his relatives, they tried, did not work out. So very difficult. Only level where it can, that is Dhyato Vishan Pumsaha. Nothing. Nothing else from it. So Srila Rup Goswami gives this direction from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. By the development of Krishna consciousness, one can know that everything has its use in Krishna's service. Those who are without knowledge of Krishna conscious artificially try to avoid material object. As a result, they desire liberation from material bondage. They do not attain to perfect stage of renunciation. Their so-called renunciation is called falgu or less important. On the other hand, a person in Krishna consciousness knows how to use everything in the service of the Lord. Therefore, he does not become a victim of material consciousness. For example, for an impersonalist, the Lord or the Absolute being impersonal cannot eat, whereas an impersonal tries to avoid good eatables. A devotee knows Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. He eats all that is offered to him in devotion. That's why you see Bhakti Yoga is such a blessing for all of us. You can cook, he's a person offered to Krishna, then honor that as a prasad. And everything is spiritualized. The Buddhi Nasa, Vishnacharya Thakur is translating as Before that, Smriti Vibrama is translating as from bewilderment develops loss of remembrance of one's own benefit derived from the instruction of the scriptures. तो स्मृति विभ्रम मीन्स शास्त्रों के अनुसार जो हमारे लिए अच्छा है वो हम भूल जाएंगे. और बुद्धिनाशों का क्या बताया गया है? फ्रॉम दैट कम्स अ डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ रिजॉल्व फॉर स्पिरिचुअल प्रैक्टिसेस. जो हमारे स्पिरिचुअल प्रैक्टिसेस के लिए जो हमारा कमिटमेंट है, जो स्पिरिचुअल प्रैक्टिसेस के लिए, वो क्या होगा? बुद्धि नाश हो. जैसे हमारा कमिटमेंट है रेगुलेटिव प्रिंसिपल्स फॉलो करना है, लेकिन इस ट्रैप में फंस जाएंगे तो क्या होगा? बुद्धि नाश हो. ही विल ब्रेक रेगुलेटिव प्रिंसिपल एंड देन वन फॉल्स इनटू द होल ऑफ samsara. That's like he goes and then he has to keep going. बहुत अच्छा अच्छा इन्होंने किया है. बलदेव देवभूषण ने किया है. फ्रॉम द डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ memory arises the destruction of the determination necessary for the knowledge of atma. तो वो बुद्धि नाशा जो है इन्होंने इस तरीके से बताया है. और स्मृति विभ्रमा कैसे बताया? डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ द मेमोरी ऑफ हिज प्लान्स टू अटेम्प्ट टू कॉन्कर द सेंसेस. वो भूल जाएगा कि मुझे तो सेंस कंट्रोल करना था. दैट इज स्मृति विभ्रमा. और बुद्धि नाशों का मतलब क्या है? कि जो डिटर्मिनेशन था वो सब खत्म हो जाएगा. लाइक दैट. Yeah, so these two now we discussed till 63. Now we'll discuss some other time. Hare Krishna. श्री प्रभुपाद की जय.